Namaste and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sat means truth, Logos means the study of science, Sattology means the science of truth or study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means the science of fake lie imagination or study of fake lie imagination. Today we have very special guest who has many views. Some of you like it, some of you don't like it, but it's up to you to decide what is important for you and pick it up. We do not say what is right or wrong. So without delay, let us welcome my good friend and very popular TV anchor or guest, Abhijit Iyer Mitra.
Well, and thanks for having me on.
Abhijit, this China and the eastern side, India is preparing very hard and trying to match rockets to rockets. And do you think the Chinese have a game plan on their sleeves?
The Chinese always have some kind of a game plan on their sleeves. The problem is it a smart game plan or is it a stupid game plan? Because remember, there is a lot of friction emerging even within the Communist Party because lots of the old factions, especially former President Jiang Zemin's faction out there, they now seem to have a huge axe to grind with Xi Jinping and they're getting into action. So we don't really know what is happening within the party, but that only makes Xi Jinping even more dangerous because he then starts behaving like a cornered rat. So let's see what's happening. As of now, we can tell what their preparations are. We can see it all on satellites. The issue is what will they do with those preparations? How will they do what they do with those preparations? That we really can't tell for the time being. And that is what is kind of giving us palpitations.
So when India talks about matching equipments to equipments, and we all know India has put L-70 guns over there and a lot of Pinaka, and they showed off some things. But they have a good number of those rockets. It's not a small number. It's a good number. And so my question to you is, so is it a good strategy to match rocket by rocket, or is it required as per as military preparedness, actually?
My issue with that has always been that when you have a country whose budget is 10 times the size of your defense budget, when they have a lot more equipment than you, matching them to rocket is usually a very foolish thing to do, right? What you need to do is probably have more standoff weapons and precision strike weapons and things like that, instead of trying to match them weapon for weapon, because that's not a game you're going to win. And therein lies our worry. Most people find it reassuring that we have a weapon-to-weapon match with the Chinese. For me, that is the particular case of worry, because, as we've discussed on this program before, when you go up against a industrial giant like China, you may win the initial few encounters for, say, 20, 30 days. But after that, it's the sheer industrial power that turns against you. And this is something Americans should know. This was the classic case of the South versus the North in the Civil War. The South, had fantastic generals and things like that, but ultimately it was sheer northern industrial power that crushed the South. So that is something that these people really need to take into account, and they're not taking it into account, which is worrying.
For Indian defense manufacturing is the second largest in Asia after China in terms of volume they can produce. But do you think that it has been misused so far, and that's why the reforms were taken to divide them into 7 different sections recently by the Indian government?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
So Indian defense manufacturing is second largest in Asia.
That's kind of an extension of the socialist state-driven foolishness of the Indian government. Because if you're taking the same ordnance factory boards and creating 7 PSUs out of them, that's fine. Are you putting them under new management? Are they getting new people to ideate them? No. Are they getting new people to do the product placement? No. Are they introducing new methods of accountability? No. Is it under, does it come under new guidance from a new defense ministry? No. So, this is just a bureaucratic paper exercise. It changes nothing on the ground. It's the belief that, just restructuring, like they did it with Air India, remember? First, it used to be Indian Airlines and Air India. Then they combined the two. Then they changed the logos. Then they went on changing the management, thinking that it could do better, and it did not. And ultimately, it had to be privatized. So this is the standard thing we're seeing, the rather touchingly naive belief of the system that somehow the government can make things profitable or more savvy or more in tune with business, when in fact the lack of accountability and responsibility makes you the exact opposite.
The one of the weapons which Indian government always says, and I'll come back to the US also, where the US manufacturing is, if you look at I live in a city which is a defense city, and we have a shipyard here. I have been given tours many times of the shipyard. They can turn around a war machine in a ship. I won't say which ones because of I'm privy to a lot of information, but they can turn around a large ship, military ship, in just 35 days. 35 days. And they can, like, if a ship is broken, 35 days they can literally build a new ship. Literally. Very patriotic, very, very patriotic. And they can ramp up their employees by almost 20 times if need be. 20 times. So normally they have 4,000. Just imagine how many people they can add at short notice. And that's the kind of patriotism which makes in American industrial complex click. That when there is a need, they'll go all out for it. And this is just one bay I'm talking about. And there are 7 bays in that shipyard. So just imagine what they can do if there is a need. I feel, and I am totally
Right.
yes.
This is the joys of capitalism, right? Normally, the capitalists will try to squeeze money out of you. But then when push comes to shove, they're also capable of ramping things up. And see, the thing about ships is when you build the first ship, you don't understand where things are going, how it's fitting in. But say the Arleigh Burke class destroyer, when you've built about 60 of those ships already, you kind of know where things are going to go, and it makes it much faster to start building. You look at European, modular shipbuilding now, you can do things super fast, very, very rapidly. The only reason they don't do it fast is to give, the labor force time to work and things like that, and to keep stretching the orders out so that they've got jobs through the year and they don't face industrial action and things like that. So this is things you can do. The issue is it's all in the private sector. In India, it's not in the private sector, it's the government sector, and they take their own sweet time. Their shipbuilding methods are obsolete, and there's literally nothing you can do. It's a mindset problem. It's not a lack of patriotism.
So yeah, you're absolutely right, because a program management is where Indian defense manufacturing has always lacked, according to me, not the skills. Because the skills they have plenty, but the program management is what is lacking. And I have seen all the push in the defense sector in India except program management. What do you say? So many programs delayed.
Look, first, there's no program management period, right? They'll put a chap in charge of program management who's had zero experience prior, or who's had experience of continuously failed programs. Now, the issue is you can't even sack these buggers, because promotion is based on seniority, not on achievement. They have to be promoted. So they become program managers, and it's essentially rewarding failure, right? And there's nothing much you can do in a situation like that. It's pretty much learning on the job, and you're not even learning on the job because there's no disincentives to getting it wrong.
So coming back to the Kashmir, the killing of innocents, and yesterday we had a huge protest all over USA, almost like 150 cities. We had a protest, small or big. San Diego had a small protest because we have a very small Indian population, but Americans joined us. Americans joined us. So the point is, the human rights of Hindus are being recognized everywhere, but the action is not being taken. Like for example, Israel has a policy of armed intervention when Jews are affected, and India doesn't have that policy. I mean, you cannot populate 8.9 million Hindus in Bangladesh against 120 million Muslims who are hell bent on destroying them. Whether any party in power, it doesn't matter. So, what do you think should be ideally the Indian government policy going forward to protect Hindus? There's no way, no country we can look forward to other than India. There's no other country.
Look, there's lots of very simple things you can do, which automatically, it doesn't have to be aimed towards Hindus, but it automatically ends up protecting Hindus, which is very clearly just implement the rule of law. Because the rule of law, starting from the judiciary to the police in India, is a crying joke, right? The judiciary keeps shifting goalposts every 15 seconds. The police, they get in when they want, they won't get in when they want. We have one of the lowest police to population ratios in spite of high crime rates. And nobody wants to reform the police, nobody wants to reform the judiciary. Now, you do this basic thing, you end up protecting Hindus, because as a rule, you will find that Hindus in India or Shias in India, certain communities, Jains in India, Buddhists in India, their polity doesn't depend on brute force thugs coming out on the road. However, some polities do depend on that. And it is the duty of the state to protect against that, but they don't think things through. This is number one. Number two, in the case of external Hindus, like in Bangladesh or Afghanistan, etc., when your inputs itself are wrong, you can't expect the output to be good. This is like your classic software, right? Ego, garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. In Bangladesh, thankfully, we have an extremely good ambassador who understands the nuances of what's happening on the ground. The problem is his bosses in Delhi don't seem to get that, you don't have to throw Sheikh Hasina under the bus in order to condemn what the Jamaat-e-Islami in Bangladesh is doing. They don't seem to get the difference between posturing and positioning. Posturing is what you say in public, positioning is what you do in private. It's very easy to say, just give a reassurance saying we are talking to the Bangladesh government, but, differences between friends should not see the light of day. Whatever we're doing quietly in private with the Bangladesh government, and that's it. It acts as a reassurance, it acts as a buttress, and then come out with a strong statement against the Jamaat-e-Islami, calling them what they are. Collaboration in genocide, which they all collaborated in the 1971 genocide and things like that. It's very easy to say that. The problem is there's a disconnect between good officers on the ground, like our ambassador in Bangladesh, and the MEA mandarins in Delhi, who are, well, let's just say not as good.
So one of the things is Jamaat, Deoband, Barelvi, like all of them have come from Deoband or Barelvi. They are like living in India. Now, when we complain about Ghazwa-e-Hind or any other, whether I do not know whether it's a real strategy or not. It comes in the media a lot, but I do not know, because Muslims are themselves not very. They've always never been united. So it's a history. But Mughals were challenged.
It's one of those cases where you actually end up feeling sad for Pakistan, because the Afghans killed more Afghans than they did Americans. Pakistanis killed more Pakistanis than any Russian, Indian, Chinese, Afghan ever killed Pakistanis, right? So it's, you can't look after your own house. How are you going to go get something else outside?
No, they sell a lot of lollipops to their own people consistently. In India, you call them churan. They sell a lot of churan to their own people. But that state is built on hatred, but coming from the origin is India. The Indian schools, Deoband is what is funding them. And there is no talk in the Indian government or anywhere else to shift these schools outside of India. Like, send them to any other country they want to go, but not in India. Because what they're doing is polarizing and creating more riots. Generally, Hindus do not start anything. They react. Sometimes out of deep desperation, they start.
This one is the issue with law, which you have guaranteed the freedom of expression and freedom of speech. And that is a very stretchable kind of a right. You can take it up to a certain point, which they do. The problem is we don't have a sophisticated understanding of jurisprudence and how to control a lot of the sort of terror sympathy stuff that you see coming out of these schools. France has a very, very clear understanding of this, what poses a danger to the state, and they understand legal mechanisms which can be implemented to control this kind of speech without seeming to favor or disfavor a specific religion in keeping with French secularism. The problem in India is we're a third world country, and a third world country doesn't just mean lots of poor people with beggars on the road. It means extremely low human capital that even the elites will have a very limited understanding of issues. And that is clearly and consistently what you see out here, that our government doesn't understand how to use principles of law or even the application of law in a completely non-partisan way to control speech coming out of only a certain community, which is highly problematic and ultimately, leading up to violence.
Going by your definition of third world country, today it is fitting in US to some extent. Okay, we are seeing a complete paralysis on the ground, and people like me can feel it when somebody says taxing over the board and going to the bank accounts and withdrawing the money. The IRS is going to monitor every transaction above $600. So, if you look at that is coming to the US also in a big way. What is your view on that?
Look, in the US, it's become more of slogans and ideology, right? You can't do something. It's become such a toxic mess in America. What do you do? There's no room for expertise anymore. There is no trust on science anymore. I think the way these people, the New York Times and the Washington Post, handled the entire, and now Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, the way they handled the out of China leak theory, and the way that Ecotech Lab and the entire consistent, conflict of interest between Fauci, the EcoHealth Foundation, Facebook, that it was using the EcoHealth Foundation as their fact checkers, and Lancet Medical Journal, which was using the head of that EcoHealth Foundation as its sort of gatekeeper and using him to bully other members of the medical profession. You tell me, where is the trust in science left anymore? And in this, the right and the left are perfectly in unison, in that the left tells you science is bigotry. Because gender is science, therefore science is bigotry, and therefore we're not going to listen to science. Have you ever heard of crap like mathematics is subjective? There are a lot of things that are subjective. Mathematics is not one of them that is subjective. Okay, but there is this whole anti-science movement happening on the left. And what is happening on the right is because a lot of the scientific establishment tend to be liberal. They've fallen into this entire mass hysteria, if you want to call it that. And they are falsifying their own results. They are suppressing science for ideology, which means the right then loses all its faith in science. Not that the right had any great faith in science to begin with. I mean, if you have crap like creationism and nonsense like that, then clearly you're not a big advocate of science. But I would have thought that Trumpists especially should have embraced vaccines instead of fighting vaccines. And yet they did the exact opposite. So, this sort of deep masochism you see both in the left and the right. I mean, this is taking Van Gogh's, cut your ear to spite your face, cut your nose. Well, he cut his ear to spite his face. They're doing far worse. They're literally chopping off their own dicks to spite their own face.
No, that's true. Yesterday, when we were protesting for the Bangladeshi Hindus and in support of them, but the majority of people told us, let's go Brandon. and and they did not understand what we are protesting for, and they just said, let's go, Brandon. That's the level of general IQ. Okay. And if I would have told them who was Andrew Jackson, most of them won't be able to tell me. Who was Andrew Jackson, who was Ulysses Grant, they won't be able to tell me. But surprisingly, the Black and the Hispanic Latino population came out with us. I
Mm.
somehow that the word native rings a bell, and it's in my latest book also, Gold, Glory, and God, where the native versus non-native politics is going to be replace the human rights politics. I think that is going to happen because it's just a cycle of history. People who have been suppressed so long.
Well, look, I mean, cycles of history go two ways. One is you have mass hysteria that lasts for a few years, like McCarthy's, anti-communist witch hunts. But then the actual witch hunts in Europe lasted for 300-400 years. The issue is we don't know what this is. I suspect because of the institutional capture of all these nut jobs, leftist CRT type nut jobs, is that this is actually going to last a lot longer than we think. It is going to destroy America, make no mistake about it. But this will last for at least, my estimation is it's one of those typical uh, uh, European witch hunts from the 14th, 13th centuries. It'll last for 400-500 years.
No, karma is a bitch. It's going to catch up. Karma is definitely going to catch up.
The issue is who will karma catch up to? Because remember, the Catholic Church, which was spreading a lot of this nonsense in Europe, and then the Protestant Church, which started doing the same thing under Martin Luther in Europe, karma never caught up with them. So remember, karma also functions in cycles of 300-400 years. So it may catch up with them after about 400-500 years, but I don't see it catching up with them in their lifetime at least.
No, yesterday was very interesting, I must tell you. So there was a restroom. There was a male sign and there is a female sign, and somebody had crossed the female sign, and he said it's unisex. And they didn't do the male sign because many of the feminine gender cannot go there, and it's dirty also, dirty as hell usually. And the third one was, which is reserved for the wheelchair guys. It was written that somebody had written over there, some redneck or whatever it is, he's written, if I find a male body in the third one, in the second one, in the female one, will end up in the third one. So the handicap one. And it was not in just one place, it was written all over the place where we were protesting. And so one thing I found out was, one thing is Americans are very uneducated about what they're facing, and the second is that they are literally not aware of where is Bangladesh. When they heard the word Bangladesh, they say, where is this country?
But why? That's nothing unique to America. I find that in any country you go, 99% of the population will be extremely stupid. In India, for all our pretensions to being the IT superpower and having lots of very smart people, 99% of the people would also not know where Bangladesh is. Their equivalent of Kim Kardashian's big ass on TV, which seems to be the last I paid attention to American TV culture, Kim Kardashian's big ass was the greatest phenomenon out there. And before that, I remember when growing up, it used to be Dolly Parton's tits. But basically what it was Kim Kardashian's ass equivalent is what you have as popular culture in India as well. So the vast majority of Indians are excruciatingly dumb. The issue, of course, is you don't know if you and I are dumb, because you and I may think of ourselves as major league intellectuals, but there'll be somebody else watching this program saying, I've never seen a bigger bunch of losers in my life. Loser, loser, loser.
I agree. I agree.
The problem is any country's problem is not the fact that 99% of its population are dumb. The problem that every country has is that the whole of that 99% think that they are the balanced 1% who are not dumb.
That's right. Coming to Australia and New Zealand, and they always call them West, and the Biden forgot to remember the name. He said that country down under. Down under is a very pejorative way to call them down under, like they're the little scums of the West. But they call themselves West, and they always participate with the West, not with the Asia. It's like the borrowed, and it's like the Pakistan always calling Arab as their founders, not the Hindus they come from. So the Australians and New Zealanders, they, what do you, when they say they're going to protect American interests, are they America's policemen, or what they are? What they are?
Well, look, I wouldn't say they're America's policemen, but honestly, I don't even know what they are. This is a decision for them to take and for the rest of America to accept. The problem is nobody in America seems to agree on what their role is.
Exactly. I mean, they will shout all American, American. If you ask an American politician, they won't be able to say where is Australia or New Zealand. Ordinary American politician, I'm so talking about.
Yeah. Well, some of them get smart over a period of time, but most of them don't.
One very popular congressman said, "Who was he referring to down under? Who was he referring to down under?"
No, that was Biden. Remember when they were announcing AUKUS, what happened was he was like, my friend Boris Johnson and oh yeah, our friend from down under. He got Scott Morrison's name.
Yeah. So who's that friend from down under? So the point which I'm saying, India is right in the middle, and we have not engaged Australia. We import coal from there in big numbers, and Australians have literally, they just reside on the coasts. There is nothing in the middle. Most of it is large truck trains running across the Australian continent. I've traveled a lot in Australia. So so when you refer to, when you look at the Indian foreign policy, we have never questioned all these things. We are just sitting like we've not even questioned the real issues happening in those countries, which can give us a diplomatic upper hand. What is your view on that?
Look, India doesn't do primary research. There's no money for primary research. A bureaucratic job isn't an opportunity to work, it's an opportunity to freeload. They all land up in DC. They don't want to do any primary research. They land up at the consulate in San Francisco. They don't want to do anything. All they do is end up playing golf and issuing visas, and that's about it. So what do you do when your culture itself is one of scrounging off other people's work and not creating networks or information that is truly independent? How are you meant to be autonomous if you don't have autonomous education? How are you meant to have an autonomous foreign policy if you don't have autonomous sources of information collection? You can't do that. Why? Because we invest very little in our human beings. All of this is a function of human investment. You don't invest in humans, you get crap. For
Very
example,
true.
you can buy a Ferrari, but if you don't teach your kid how to drive the Ferrari, that Ferrari is going to get totaled in no time. It's like that. You invest. The people who buy Ferraris have invested enough in themselves to be able to afford a Ferrari. When you gift somebody a Ferrari to somebody who hasn't deserved it, then you're creating a mismatch between the machine and the human. In India, we think these mismatches are good. In reality, they're never good. It's essentially like giving a monkey a chainsaw.
Well, Ferraris cannot be driven in California roads today. Probably Indian roads are better than California roads. And if any California governor or anyone is watching, please note it. And we we need more trucks in California and Ferraris. I know, Abhijit, you have to go. And thank you for your time. Would you like to say one last thing? Most of the Hindus complain about Hindu unity, but I do not see any action on the ground. What do you like to say on that?
Hasn't that been a historical problem? I mean, you look traditionally, when have we ever been united against anything? Right? Did you unite against Ghazni? Did you unite against Ghori? You literally did nothing. I find a lot of Hindus complaining about it, but those are the same Hindus that will, be the first person to exclude somebody because their religious practices don't conform, their dietary practices don't conform, their clothes don't conform, or, their belief in theology is in 100% of your belief system. Best of luck. Your problem, not mine.
That's right. That's right. So thank you, Abhijit. And thank you for all the viewers for watching and all the big fans of Abhijit. And when it comes on YouTube, do let us know your feedback. Namaste. Thank you.